This is Don Anthony with the Swordsport podcast. I'm joined by the illustrious Alexander Massialas. And Alexander, thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
Congratulations on all of your success. Give me a little short overview of your background in fencing. Most of us know a little bit about it, but I want to hear it from in your own words.
Obviously, ever since I was a kid, I knew about the sport with my father being a three-time Olympian. It was easy to get interested when you have old fencing photos, his old fencing equipment, his trophies, rings, and most importantly, all his old Olympic paraphernalia, whether it be like the Olympic rings or just old photos he had of him competing. That was all a great inspiration, not only for me to go into fencing, but to be really interested in the Olympic movement. Now, when I turned 5 years old, my father started his own fencing club, and I wanted to join immediately. I was so excited to finally, have an opportunity to do the sport that I've had so much interest in from the very beginning. But my dad had this rule where he didn't want kids under 7 starting because they're too young, because they don't understand the sport. There are a lot of rules involved. Equipment can get hot. Foil can be a little bit too heavy for kids. So he actually made me wait a couple of years. And when my 7th birthday rolled around, finally it was my time to start. And I knew from that point on, that was a very obvious indication that me being at the club, I was just another student. I wasn't his son or anything. He treated me just like he would treat any other student, because he's turned away kids that he thought were too young, and he turned away me at the beginning too. So I knew that, when we were at the club, he's a coach on the strip, but he's a father at home, and it's worked out so far so well.
Oh, that's really cool. And not that your dad has any of the Olympic movement paraphernalia around or anything. You've come from a fencing family. It's not just you, it's your grandfather, your father, and even your sister. What's that family dynamic in the sport?
Even though my grandfather obviously is the oldest out of all of us, he wasn't the first one to start. My father was the first one to start, and he picked it up afterwards. But it's just really nice to be able to be in a family where everyone really understands the kind of training, the struggles, and just the experience that we all have to go through. Especially for me, when I was growing up and doing better and better on the senior circuit, it was really nice to have my father, who's been through it all before, who was a 3-time Olympian, to kind of guide me through the process, going through London and then Rio. Though both London and Rio were eye-opening experiences, especially London because that was my first Olympic Games, having my father with the experience that he's had at the Olympic Games with his input and everything really helps a lot for me to try and be successful and really enjoy the games as much as possible. Now, at home, though we are a big fencing family, oftentimes we try and stay away from the topic of fencing at home because it can be a little too much sometimes. If I ever have a question, or my sister wants to bring something up, or my father wants to bring something up with the two of us, it's really easy for him to do that just because we are all involved in the sport, clearly, and we all have had our own successes in the sport as well.
That's a nice dynamic, and it's nice the way you guys sort of leave work in the office unless you just have to have, one of those conversations. Given that your father started the club, it's the M team, your mom's very much involved in the club. What's it like from, the dynamic with her and her support and the club? We talk about your dad, we see your dad all the time, but, your mom is right there with you as well.
As I said in Rio, she's the silent force behind everything that I do and everything our club does, because though she strays away from the spotlight, without her, it's pretty impossible for anything to get done. Any of the accomplishments we've had, behind it all, she's been there every step of the way. If it wasn't for her, my father wouldn't even started the fencing club. She was the reason he started the fencing club, because she believed in him and believed in his talent as a coach. And ever since then, she's done everything from the very beginning. She quit her job with her piano store so that she can focus more time with me and my sister and help my father at the club. And ever since we have had the new location, she's been there pretty much every day, helping new kids, bringing the necessities to the club, taking care of our coaches, and our training staff and everything. Even for me, support I get from her every day, the love and sometimes a little too much nagging. But if it wasn't for her, none of this would be possible. And I think if you ask any one of us, my father, my sister, my grandfather, and everyone at our fencing club, everyone would agree the amount of success we've had as a club, as we've had as a family, would not be there if my mom wasn't doing everything she could every single day to help us out.
Speaking of your mom and her giving up and, all the things that she does, she was a piano teacher for one of your teammates, Mr. Meinhardt.
Yeah,
And understand that's how he got into the sport. And I just want to get your thoughts about, Garrick, as well as all of the other M teammates who have had an influence on you, and just sort of what that training regime is like in your club.
I knew Garrick before he was even a fencer. He was taking piano lessons at my house, playing video games with me before and after his lessons if he didn't have a ride to practice yet, or, his mom was running late or something. So I knew Garrick before he was a fencer. And Jane, Garrick's mom, found out my dad was starting a fencing club and had fencing classes. She was immediately interested and signed Garrick right up for it. And, the rest is history. Garrick still came to our house for piano lessons. And then from there, we would drive together to the fencing club. But eventually the piano lessons took kind of a backseat, and, he was coming less and less to our house for piano lessons and going straight to the club more and more often to just focus on fencing. And eventually my dad completely stole my mom's student from right underneath her. But because I've had this relationship with Garrick since the beginning, I've seen his journey all throughout his career, right from the very beginning. His days in the youth categories were fairly similar to mine, where he didn't see a gold medal at a national competition until about the Y14 age. And then in the cadets and juniors really started to take off, and he really paved the way to show younger fencers that they can be successful despite their young age, with him being the youngest male athlete for Team USA. And he was definitely the youngest Team USA athlete in Beijing at 18 years old. So for me, that really proved to me that in 2012, it was actually a possibility for me to make the Olympic team, because in 2012, I would also be 18. It went to show that anything was possible, especially in a time where U.S. fencing wasn't as strong in men's foil and as dominant on the senior world circuit. It was really great to have not only a fencer to look up to, but a fencer that actually was from my own fencing club that my father trained himself and went through the same exact process as I did. It really gave me hope to try and do everything possible to make it to the Olympic Games and be successful at the Olympic Games as well.
Yeah, and then you also had the video game background, so that didn't hurt either. So
yeah. I mean, I grew up playing a little bit of video games with Garrick, and not only was Garrick a great influence on my fencing, but I had a ton of great peers at our fencing club. Nabuo Bravo is one of my best friends ever since I was a kid. We went to Chinese American International School since we were 5 years old, all the way to 8th grade, but started fencing exactly in the same class at 7 years old. So in the Y10s and Y12s, he kicked my butt every single time. I think he has the record for the most Y10 men's foil gold medals ever in the U.S. because
wow.
I swear I think I only saw him lose one time since he was 8 years old at a Y10 national. But he served as a great influence on me as well, because I had this rival who was from my own club that I couldn't beat. He was my best friend, and I couldn't beat him every single time. I couldn't beat him. It really drove me to work hard at practice and try and focus on technique and all the little things to try and make myself a better fencer just to get an edge over him. And not only that, to have him as, one of my best friends, to go through the process of the cadet national teams together, the junior national teams together, has been extremely rewarding. And without him and, a number of our fencers, Turner Caldwell is another one, 2 years older than me, went to Stanford, showed that you could have a lot of success in fencing going to a school that isn't necessarily particularly well known for its NCAA success. It gave me inspiration to also kind of follow in his footsteps to go to Stanford and be able to train with my dad and do well nationally and internationally as well at the same time as trying to, go to Stanford and be a mechanical engineering major.
Yeah, that's a lot. And Turner, I mean, I remember because he was a little bit ahead of you in interviewing him and getting NCAA results, even though there weren't a whole lot of you, coming out of Stanford. He was definitely one of the first that I saw on the radar when we were doing NCAA broadcasts. So and that goes up to the next question. So what was it like, being at Stanford, doing an engineering degree, and training at the same time in preparation, after London and in preparation for Rio?
It was hard. I mean, my experience at Stanford has been the most amazing 4 years I could ask for. 5 if you count my year off in San Francisco, but I still went to Stanford to do physical training with the athletic training staff there. I still went there to kind of, hang out with friends when I had free time during their senior year. And it was, for me, it was just, I have nothing but great things to say about the school. I mean, I had a fantastic 4 years there. I was able to balance the social life while also training and also having, a rigorous academic workload as well. A Stanford mechanical engineering degree, it was a lot of work. Especially because my first 3 years, I think, might have not taken as many classes as I should have, or not. I focus on the social aspects and the training aspects a little too much. But just the people I've met there, the professors I've become close to, I wouldn't give that experience up for anything. And to go out there and win a couple NCAA championships for Stanford, and then come third a couple years, to working with the fencing team there, they have a great group of kids on the fencing team. We're all pretty close, and some of my best friends from Stanford on the fencing team, Justin Lee came in my year as a men's foilist. I've known him since I was about 10 years old, competing on the same circuits, and through bonding on the fencing team, we became really, really good friends, better friends than we were before. It's just been amazing to go through the process of going to such a rigorous school, but also being able to enjoy the fencing, enjoy the social life there. I think, I wouldn't give that experience up for anything else in the world.
When we were in Rio, you had quite a following. You had a whole, a group of friends. How many guys and girls that came down to see you in Rio?
I don't really remember the number. Something in the 16s or 16 to 18 range. A lot of them were from my freshman dorm, people I've known throughout the years. It was amazing to have all of them show their support and come out. Not often do Americans get to compete in an event where you have a huge cheering crowd. We're usually in Europe or Asia or, even South America sometimes. So there's not a huge crowd there cheering for us, but to have 16 of my closest friends show up to Rio, really make the trek all the way down there, and try and be the loudest, most boisterous group in the stadium was just amazing. Because for me, it was really nice to have this humongous support group, especially when things aren't looking so good, to hear their words and to hear what they have to say and their support. It really meant a lot to me. And it just kind of goes to show what kind of friends they are. They graduate Stanford, go on this massive trip before they all start work, and they end it in Rio cheering me on. And I couldn't have been happier with my friends at that moment.
Yeah, they were, I'll have to say they were very cool. And I enjoyed hanging out with your friends and also just hearing about, how they wove their travels into their support and being such a great cheering section for you as you decided to go and take a couple of medals. So tell me a little bit about the Rio experience besides your friends.
Rio was amazing. Walking the opening ceremonies is always an unforgettable moment. But for me this time, I think the biggest difference between Rio and London, in London, I was so excited just for the Olympic Games, excited to do the opening ceremonies, excited to meet people, excited to experience London and watch different events. And in Rio, the difference was, I think, I'd gone through it all before, but the main thing was, I remember we were there in Rio a couple of weeks before training, getting ready, getting acclimated to the environment. And every day, for some reason, inside my heart, it just felt like, look, I'm ready to fence. Like, I just want to go out there and fence. Not that I didn't want to do anything else, but the number one thing in Rio that stuck out to me was how much more I wanted to just get on the strip and fence than anything else that Rio or the Olympic Games had to offer. Obviously I walked in the opening ceremonies. Obviously I watched different events, but for me, leading up to the games, I was just so excited to, go on the strip and show what I can do. And I think that really, it trickled over into the way I fenced, in the individual, in particular, because, I was so excited. I was so ready. And I remember, just every day, especially I was dealing with a little bit of an injury, so I wasn't training as much as I wanted to. I wanted to fence more bouts in training, but I couldn't. And every day I'd be like, come on, I just want to fence. Like, I just want to fence. And I've never had such an eagerness to go out there and show my abilities than in that moment, in those days leading up to the individual event. So for me, that was the biggest change between the two of them. And obviously I was able to pull out a silver medal in the individual, which is an amazing accomplishment. I'll never forget being up there on the podium and looking at my friends and family and just savoring the moment. Obviously, I wish it could have been a gold. That's obviously what I strive for every single day, and that was the goal going into the Olympics. But unfortunately, it wasn't my day. Garoto had a fantastic day and a fantastic bout against me. So he made fence an amazing bout, and for me, it was disappointing. But all the disappointment left after the first 5-10 minutes, because my father was right there, comes up right after the bout, even when I'm, on the strip still sulking, going around the venue afterwards, being able to hug my mom and my sister and just know that I was all okay. And I still made my family and friends proud, and the tons of support from the American people, the American fencing community through Twitter and different social media outlets. And even Leslie Jones, the famous actress, tweeting at me being like, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this? I want to start fencing right now. That was, once I was able to settle and calm my emotions a little bit, those tears of sadness turned into, tears of just pride and joy, because I knew I did my country proud. I did my family and friends and everyone so proudly.
First of all, it was an amazing moment. You made us all very proud. Had the luck of being part of the award ceremony, and for me, it just was one of the greatest experiences, literally, that I've had. So thanks for sharing it with me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being one of the award givers.
That was an honor. You get the silver, and then you go back into the team event, and this is sort of, hey, first of all, congratulations on being number one fencer over 2 years, and also, the team championship titles. But tell me, what was the team like in Rio, and what is this men's foil team dynamic like?
We've been together for so long, they just feel like brothers to me. We all have faith in each other to go out there in the fence the best that we can do, and the best to our abilities. And in Rio, we came out, we fenced against a hard bout against Egypt that we thought it was a little tougher than we expected. And then we came back and we fenced a really tough match against Russia. But unfortunately, that wasn't a great match for me. I remember I felt like I had let my whole team down. I really, it's probably one of the worst team matches I have fenced in my career. Once Chermisnov scored the last touch on me, I really had my head hang low, because I really felt like I had let my team down. It was on me, the burden was on me, because I was the one who'd fenced so poorly in that team event. Even after Miles had fenced so phenomenally to bring us back, we were down, and he did his best to put us in the contention, put me up with the lead going to the last match, even after I'd already blown a couple leads earlier in the match. And that was a really, really tough moment for me to try and swallow. But the beauty of our team was none of them held it against me. The first thing they said to me was, instead of "it's your fault," the first words were like, "Hey, you know what? Keep your head up. We have one more to go. We believe in you still. You're still going to be our anchor." They had a lot of faith in me to go out there and perform against Italy. And the fact that they were able to bring me out of one of the toughest moments that I've faced as an athlete, that was probably the worst I've ever felt as an athlete in my career. And for them to be able to bring me out of that in the limited amount of time we had between the semifinal bout and the bronze medal bout goes to show how close we are with each other, because I don't think, barring a few exceptions, I don't think there are a lot of people in this world that could have got me out of the funk I really was in. The amount of negativity I was feeling in that moment, I have to take my hat off to all three of those guys, Garrick, Miles, Race, and even David, who's been with us and doing the same circuit with us for so many years as well. Though he didn't make the Olympic team, he was there in Rio supporting us, and having all four of those guys there to bring me back up and get me in the right headspace to go out there and fence against Italy, it was amazing. So I wouldn't trust any other four guys to do that with me. And it really gave me the strength and, the confidence to go out there and be like, hey, I had the worst team match I've ever fenced, but I still have a job to do today. My teammates have faith in me to go out there and execute my job, and I'm not going to let them down again. And so that's what I did. I went into that team event against Italy. I just tried to fence my heart out and, really redeem myself for the faults I had had in the previous match against Russia. And then finally ending the day with a bronze medal with those guys, the guys who were able to bring me out of this funk, the guys who I've been competing with for so many years. It was an amazing feeling, just going out there, bringing the American flag, just proudly displaying it and waving to the crowd, to the tons of family and friends that we all had there, was an amazing feeling. And I wouldn't want to do it with any other team. So that, I guess, hopefully gives a good snapshot into how we act as a team and how we interact and how close we are.
Well, you guys definitely came through and delivered strong. And second time around in that games, you made us very proud. So I heard you guys did an interview. I think we were in Budapest, Hungary, I think. And the woman from the FIE said you guys were just so amazing and like a boy band, sort of like the Beatles or what. And she was just saying everybody has their role. So how would you describe the roles that the three or the four of your compadres, including David, play in the on this team dynamic? Give me some idea. Who would you describe them as?
I have to go out there and say the one who gives them, who's the wildest and, sometimes gives the most energy has got to be Miles,
Right.
He's the guy who's always constantly making us laugh, who's always saying the most ridiculous stuff. But also at the end of the day, I know I can trust him in a team event to go out there and perform to the best of his abilities. And, when he's rolling on a team event, it's impossible to stop us. He'll go out there and he'll just break teams down because he'll do some crazy stuff that we would never do ourselves and never tell him to do ourselves, but somehow hit it 2, 3, 4 touches in a row and really just break the spirits of a lot of teams before they even have a chance to get a good action off. And then Race, also an amazing energy fencer, especially most recently Rio and since after Rio, his energy in the team event has been absolutely phenomenal. Always giving 110%, screaming, yelling, getting us all involved, getting us all pumped, making sure, especially because me and Garrick sometimes can be a little more quiet on the team, getting us involved and getting us, more energized. It just it really makes us, our box and, our side of the strip feel electric. Between Miles and Race. And then Garrick is, the most experienced out of all of us. He's the one who's been to 3 Olympic Games. He's the one who's been on various U.S. teams the most. And also he's a calming presence for me in particular, because when things can get a little bit heated and, especially if things aren't going super well during the match, I can always look to Garrick and he'll give some very calm advice that I have to listen to because it is extremely wise. And for me, it's a good counterbalance to sometimes the boisterousness of Miles and Race. And then, having David there supporting us there 100% of the time. David's also one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. So just being able to keep the atmosphere light and fun is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why we are successful as a team, because when we go out there, we are really enjoying ourselves. We'll laugh in the box. We'll be serious when we have to, but we're always smiling. We're always having a good time. And when we're all smiling and when we're having a good time and when we're joking and fencing and having fun with our fencing, that's when we fence our best. I think it's really shown itself in the last 4 team events because we've gone out there and we fence hard, but we've also had fun. We've gone out there and fenced the way we want to fence. And when we fence the way we want to fence, and I think we're unstoppable because we have 4 extremely strong fencers that can be rotated in or out in any way, shape, or form. And we all trust each other to go out there and be able to beat whoever is on the other side of the strip because we all know each other so well and we know each other's abilities so well. I know I can trust Garrick, Miles, and Race to go out there and beat anyone else we're fencing against, regardless of how they're ranked in the world, because I know how they've worked. I know they're really the extent of their abilities just from training and competing with them for so long. We just try to go out there. And as I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but yeah, just have a good time, focus when you have to, really put the clamps down when things are getting tough. But the fact that we all have faith in each other to go out there and beat whoever's on the other side of the strip, I think is such a great feeling.
Well, you guys are definitely having a good time at this point. You've run the last 4 World Cup team events, solidly number 1 in the world. So, the question is, what do you do next? Because you haven't even had a lot of close bouts over the last 3 events.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of on a roll. Luckily, as I said before, we're 4 of the best fencers in the world. I don't think any other team really has a team as strong as we do. And sometimes I don't even think the numbers do us justice because Miles can go out there and just like dominate anyone on the other side of the strip when he's having a good day. Garrett can go out there and dominate anyone out there on a good day. I mean, Garrick has had 2 of the biggest matches for us in the Olympic Games in my whole career, right? Against France in London to upset France to make the top 4. We were down by maybe 5-6 touches, and he went on an 11-1, 11-2 tear against Sintez of France to put us not only bring us back, but to put us up and put us up by a decent margin as well going into the last few bouts. So, and then against Italy, having him against Baldini and doing the same thing, it was a close match, down by a few or so, and then Garrick went out there and did his job and had one of the biggest team bouts again. Just goes to show, look, when the chips are down, Garrick is going to go out there and perform. He can go out there and just score touches and put us back in a position to be successful. And it's wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of horsepower. Horsepower.
Exactly. Yeah. As I said, I really don't think the numbers do us justice sometimes. And that, just right there is 2 big indications of how much that effect kind of is.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Swordsport Podcast. The Swordsport Podcast is a production of Swordsport.tv and is produced and engineered by myself, Don Anthony, and Rick Lotzenheiser. We would like to give a special thank you to the King Arts Complex and their CEO, Demetrius Neely, for providing us a great space to work from in Columbus, Ohio. To subscribe to the Swordsport Podcast, check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.